Hey guys, welcome to DG Gaming Tips, and thank you very much for all the views and comments on my Golf Club 2 videos so far. These seem to be going down quite well, and I've had a couple of comments on whether I can do some tips on chipping. So, you know, I'm here to serve. Let's give it a go.
All right. I said a 1 and a 2.
So like what we did with the putting, let's have a look at the training menu section and see if we can take any nuggets of advice from the developer themselves. So there's no dedicated chipping lesson. There is a chipping practice, which can be quite handy, but there are some chipping relevant points in the clubs and shot types and the advanced shots lessons. So let's cover those off first.
Hello and welcome to this lesson where we will talk about clubs and shot types. I am going to show you how to make the most of what's in your golf bag with a few simple tricks. Let's go.
Well, thank you very much for that, but like we saw on the putting lessons, these are not going to show you any interesting shortcuts or tricks to drastically improve your chipping, but let's run through it anyway and I'll point out some of the bits that I think can be important.
Okay, so for this shot you're hitting into the wind. This means you are going to have to club up.
So getting your chipping distance bang on is super important, and I mentioned this in the last swingometer video. The guys getting really great scores on Golf Club 2 are those that can do this approach shot to the green and land it within 10 feet of the hole. So what have we got here? 79 yards to the pin and 1 foot down. In case this is not obvious, when the pin position is lower in height than the point that you're standing at, means that the ball's got more air time and will travel further, as illustrated here. So 1 foot in this case is not going to make a massive difference. If the ball is in the air for an extra 1 foot of travelling time, how many extra inches is that going to add on to the distance? Now this is going to change depending on how lofted the pitch curve is. If you're going for a really high loft and it's going to come in almost vertically, probably not make much difference. But if you're doing a low loft kind of pitch and run, it will make more of a difference. But in case of this normal chip, let's just simplify it and say 1 foot down is going to result in 1 yard extra distance. So take that yard off, so aiming for 78 yards pin distance. And in terms of wind, we're hitting into 16 miles per hour coming directly into our face. So what kind of effect is that going to have? In terms of a little experiment, let's just assume 16 miles per hour equates to 1 yard extra power needed to combat it. So 78 plus 16 equals 94. And then in terms of the ball's lie in the grass, it reckons will retain between 93% and 98%. So let's just average that out at 95.
So let's press the change club button until you get to the pitching wedge. Then just pop this shot onto the green.
So the pitching wedge reckons it can hit it 109 yards and then there'll be a carry ball run after that. So 95% of 109 yards is about 104 yards. And if we take into account that wind calculation estimate we're using, which is 1 yard off for each mile per hour directly in our face, that's 104 minus 16 equals 88. And like we said before, the pin position 1 foot down from where we're standing is going to equate to 1 yard extra distance, so that's 89. So apologies for this getting very technical very quickly. Hadn't even got you warmed up. But what we've done there is try to estimate the amount of distance that we want to hit it versus the amount of distance that the club can do. Anyway, let's roll the tape and see what happens. So the ball struck the ground at 92 yards and then ran on for what, another 2 or 3 feet there? So I hit the ball at pretty much perfect technique and centre aim, and looking back at our calculation we estimated it would hit it 89 yards, but it actually went 92, so maybe we're thinking 1 foot down on this kind of normal lofted pitch actually equates to 3 yards in distance. And if we look back at the calculation of what we wanted to hit and apply the same logic, then rather than taking 1 yard off, we take 3 off, and that's actually down to 92. But then we see we've run some way past the hole, so clearly we wanted less than that. Anyway, Jesus, before you click off to another video, let's move on.
And we're moving on. Now it's only a matter of time before you find yourself in a situation where the normal shot type is just not going to do. Now to get on the green from here, you are going to need a chip shot. So let's press the change shot type button until you get to the chip shot, and then chip that ball nice and close to the pin with your next stroke.
So not a huge amount to say on this one. The lesson has been set up really to teach you about a chip and a run. and they've distanced it in such a way that it's actually going to fall exactly where you want it to. So the pin's 23 yards away, flat, and a chip with a sand wedge can hit it 16 yards. And we're hitting out of what it claims to be heavy rough, and we'll average that out at retaining 90% of the power of the club. Let's roll the tape, see what happens. Chip-tastic! Inch perfect! So let's just look back at those numbers again. So we wanted to hit it 23 yards, and the sand wedge chip was capable of hitting it 90% of 16 yards, which is 14 yards. So I think the takeaway here is for a sand wedge chip and run on the flat, the club power distance is 60% of the pin distance that we want to reach. And just to be clear, that means the ball's going to travel through the air for the first 14 yards and then run on for the next 9 yards. Let's just rewind and confirm that's what happened. Yup. And yup.
And nailed that one. Let's keep going. Information about the current lie of your ball is available always in the top right corner of the screen. This will give you a range of how much spin and power your shot will retain.
Okay, so we've talked about most of the power retention points, but interesting how he mentioned spin in that as well, not just the power. Which means if you're expecting and used to backspin coming off a chip, then if you've only got 50% retention, then you're only going to get half of that as well.
Now for this particular situation, you're going to want to club up to the sand wedge and switch your shot type to the flop shot. Then stick this one on the green.
So, based on our previous calculations and experiences, let's just do a rough guesstimate on how far we think this is going to go. It's a flop shot, so it's not going to be the same as the previous chip shot. So the top right ball lie box is saying that will retain somewhere between 44 and 64, so half of that is 54% of 30 yards equals 16 yards. And the pin is 3 feet above our current standing position, so we said that's going to have an effect of somewhere between 3 and 9 yards. And let's roll the tape and see what happens. Yup. So the chip in air time and distance was exactly as we predicted, and it ran on for an extra 6 yards. So rerunning our calculation on the ball impact point as a percentage of its final resting point is 63%, about the same as last time. Now, one caveat here is the green speed is going to make a massive difference to how much the ball runs, so we need to, take this with a pinch of salt.
Well, you nailed that one. Let's move on. Hello there, and welcome to the lesson on advanced shots. In this lesson, we're going to learn about techniques you're going to want to master if you want to compete with the pros.
I mean, I do. I want to compete with the pros. Let's get stuck into these.
Let's begin. Sometimes you'll need to make a partial swing to dial in your distance just the way you need it. In this case, your chip shot's going to go about twice as far as the cup.
Twice as far, huh? Let's just quickly do the math on that one. So it's 21 yards to the pin and it's 1 foot down, and we're saying 1 foot extra air time is equal to 3 yards, so take the 3 off. So we want to hit it as though it's 18 yards away. And then our pitching wedge chip can hit it to 24 yards with a carry on. And the ball lie indicator is saying we've got between 91 and 98%, so let's average that at 94.5%, which equals 23 yards to where the ball hits the ground. And then applying our 60% rule of where the ball hits the ground versus where it runs on and its final resting place comes out at 38 yards. So we want to hit it 18 yards, whereas we think it will run on to 38. So yeah, I can agree with him there. Club's going to hit it twice the distance and we want about half the power. The main challenge is going to be judging visually where halfway point is on the swing. And I think for halfway points and third points, it's not too difficult. I'm not going to go to the effort of making a swingometer for this one based on timings. So let's give it a go, a 10.5 swing, see how it turns out. So midway visually for the swing, I would estimate somewhere at the point of my right kneecap, but if we roll the tape on a good chip, we can see I actually lifted halfway up my thigh. So I'm thinking maybe it's not a linear scale of swing power, Kind of similar to what we see in the putting. Maybe the chip starts off slow and then gets more and more powerful the higher we go. Anyway, let's bear that in mind and see if it holds true for the chips coming up. And just a quick sanity check on the ball's air time versus how long it ran on for. We estimated the club will hit it 23 yards and we want half power, so that's 11.5 yards. And looking back at the tape, it landed at 11 yards. So that's pretty much right. But then on this one it runs on all the way to 21 yards. So that's more like a 50% ratio of air time to run on. So not sure how to explain that. Didn't look like the green was downhill. Maybe on this one the green speed's faster? Who can tell?
Nicely done, and we're moving on. Manually adjusting the loft of your shots is going to help you get that ball closer to your target. The catch here is that changing your loft also increases the difficulty of your shot.
Okay, so this is a bit of a weird lesson because I don't think you'd be using this club for this distance, since the sand wedge's got a chipping distance of 82, so that would be far more appropriate. But anyway, let's work with it. It's probably a good time to talk about the loft or the surface angle of an iron, just in case that's not obvious to everybody. So an iron's hitting distance is a combination of its design, weight, but mostly about the loft of the club face as to how high it hits it into the air. And the difference between a pitching wedge and a sand wedge and a lob wedge is the loft or angle of the surface of the club. But then in this lesson it's asking you to increase the amount of loft. How is that even possible? Well, the golfer can do a technique whereby they basically twist the angle of the club, adjust their stance, and essentially create their own custom club face angle. You don't have to worry about the player's technique in this game, just how much you want to increase or decrease that loft. So in this lesson it's a bit weird because they're forcing you to use one club higher than you should be, and you can't change it. Therefore, to reduce your distance you have to push the loft up to the max in order to get it close to the pin. Whereas in normal situations where you control the clubs and you can get it a bit closer, then you'll only be changing the loft a little bit up, a little bit down, and that's easier to judge. But still, it's difficult to know how much. Let's roll the tape on this one and see how much distance the max loft cuts out.
Well done.
Now, I was going to leave it there and just say you guys are going to have to do a trial and error on this one, but I know how much you guys like numbers, so let's do a couple of experiments and see if we can come up with some sort of measurement technique for how much loft equals how much distance gets cut off. So in that last shot with the loft turned up to the max, we hit it a perfect 77 yards, which was asked of us. And then let's just play a normal shot with no loft and just confirm how far that hits it. So 109 as the club guide suggested, even though it was 1 foot downhill, but never mind. And then let's see if we can count how many loft increments there are by doing a very quick press of the up button on the controller. Not the joystick, the up button. Needs to be quick though, because it kind of misinterprets it as a long press. You just need to go tap, 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 and I count 12 between middle position and max. So the interesting test now is if we drop the increments down 6 to halfway, do we land halfway between 77 and 109 yards? Let's find out. Halfway between 77 and 109 is 93. Drum roll, please. Near enough. You are welcome. So, what do we conclude from that? Well, for a normal pitching wedge shot, each loft increment is equal to 2.66 yards, decrease or increase depending on which way you're going. Now, this is going to change for each club type because the loft height's different, but anyway, you can probably work with that. So guys, I think I'll leave it there for now. There was a lot of information to take in those lessons, more than I thought. So I think I'll make another video and we're going to go through in detail the 5 different chip shots that you can use and see if any of these tips and tricks translate into better chipping on the course. So give me a like if that's been useful to you and reduce your chipping scores, and consider subscribing if you want to be notified about the new video coming out soon. So until next time folks, all's to be said is happy golfing.